Welcome, everyone. It's early August. I have John Sneisen, The Economic Truth. That's a powerful website, powerful way to go, and it's also true. So, to be redundant, John, welcome. We're going to talk about something that you and I and many in, let's say, the sound money movement or whatever you want to call it, I don't really like labels, have talked about, and that is how to dismantle the Fed. And you wrote a white paper on that. So let me turn it over to you. Let's discuss it.
Yeah, well, so what's interesting, David, is I always like so many people have wanted to be like, oh yeah, we got to get rid of the central banks and so on. And a lot of people have come to, a certain extent to with some ideas, but I thought, since I have all the legal framework and everything in front of me, with, I used artificial intelligence to get to the point, and I was like, yeah, it has pretty much everything when it comes to laws, when it comes to ideas. And so I just had, I think my prompt was like, it'd probably be like a whole word page. Most people, they just throw out a one sentence prompt and then, go with that. But I usually like just put together a lot because I know the more I put into it with what I want from it, what I am looking for, and so on, it really becomes a very powerful reply usually that I found. Like I created some really cool stuff with the things that are probably like now I run like even with my coder friends, that are working on all the projects, we just throw it into AI and then it actually gives really good and concise ideas of what it thinks needs to be done and so on. So it's really, I just find it very powerful. Some people are, of course, like a bit afraid of it, but I think it's a super powerful tool. So I thought, everybody wants to get rid of the Fed, so how about we create a white paper, not only on, abolishing the Fed, but how to abolish and then prosecute people that have created the Fed and that created this basically an entity that has they could legally counterfeit, but they also are the backstop for all the banks
All
to,
right.
protect them from when they make horrible investments, which they usually do in cycles. Especially now with, I really like the recent interview with Richard Werner, and Tucker Carlson that came
Very
out where they
good.
talk about very fantastic, really deep look into the banking system. And after, looking at that for a while and be like, hey, yeah, we should do something so people have like kind of a blueprint if they want to come after and actually removing the Federal Reserve, but not only remove, but actually try to come after the people that have created it, because in my view, they've done some very criminal things by bailing out banks and nobody's in prison for, lending out atrocious amounts of money, especially like in today's system, it's basically for non-productive assets. If the current banking system might work a little bit better if you actually provide to growth, you provide loans to something that actually will grow and produce something. But today we don't. Like most of the banking today is not at that level, or it's at the higher level where you have J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and all them like just borrowing to the big corporations are just buying back stocks and financially engineering instead of actually creating something of real value. So yeah, so I thought I'd create a little blueprint on that, and also to then go back to free market money. I'm not for like there's some people that are out there. One of my good friends actually, he wants a bank that are controlled a treasure by the U.S. Treasury, and
Mhm.
then there's others that want gold and silver. I just want like free market that are so people can actually pick and choose. I know people say, oh well, you got to have something uniform, that everybody could use. It's like, well, why don't you just let people choose first of all, and then you can go from there. So yeah, I created, it just goes into the whole central banking monopoly structure, like the whole deception of it. It kind of explains that through. So I have like certain points. I have the executive summary. I should probably read it for people so they kind of get the gist of what it's all about. This white paper presents a comprehensive roadmap to dismantle the Federal Reserve System and to replace it with a truly free market monetary system. It challenges the legal privileges and moral foundations of central banking. It exposes its structural fraud and calls for both peaceful transition and criminal accountability for those who engineered and maintained the institutionalized scam. In its place, we advocate for a decentralized, open monetary order where currencies freely compete without state coercion, monopolies, and privileged gatekeepers. So basically, I go into how to, I expose it first of all because a lot of people still don't know about it. So I thought it was good to add that to the start of it, and then I go into, how we actually gonna basically take away its power in its current form legally, with getting into power and then structurally taking it down. And then I go into how to then apply a new system, but it's not a monopolist system. It's a free type of market system that lets us freely choose what we want to use as our currency or money. So the second one I just talk about, like point number 2 here, I talk about the central banking monopoly and the structured deception, that's been going on for ever since central banking was created. The whole banking system itself and double accounting fraud really started with the Venetians bankers, the Medicis and other families in Italy. And then it's just over time really have evolved. In China, they tried to create kind of a central entity that printed paper money. And so they didn't have, the structured ledger type of system there. So they had a form of paper money that the United States kind of had ish at times. And then I go into the mechanism of the fraud that Fed is doing and how it pays itself with monopoly money. So maybe I should read a little excerpt from that because I think it is quite interesting what it came up with to me. So unlike any other entity on Earth, the Federal Reserve can run massive operational losses, currently at 200 billion. I think what is the current one? Was it even 1 trillion they're talking about now in losses on the books of the Federal Reserve? I forgot, but it could then have those losses deferred, still pay $10 billion in salary, and then work on buildings, their pensions, and their tech that they have to run their business, and do so simply by creating reserves out of thin air. This would be fraud or embezzlement if any other private bank did it. Yet the Federal Reserve can legally do this because it wrote its own operational rules under the Federal Reserve Act, has full control over its internal balance sheet, and it faces no market competition from currency issuance. And it bears no obligation to be solvent, accountable, or limited by earnings. This is monetary authoritarianism disguised as a public service. So that is actually ChatGPT concluding this from all of its knowledge. I just like it because it has so much knowledge and I want to use it, but I also want to then take other viewpoints because you can do that. You could lay in libertarianism, anarcho-capitalism, and other economics thoughts in there and then kind of dissect it from that point of view. So I really like that and how it's able to do that to explain kind of what's going on and why what they're doing would be completely illegal if it was not, their entity that they created their own law to run.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to interject too much because I don't want to interrupt your flow, but point number 1 I immediately thought of was, this bill was passed, I think it was December 23rd, 1913, and there are many scholars that have indicated that it really wasn't even passed with enough vote to really be recognized at law. But, hey, who cares about what the rules are? We're the bankers, and we paid off enough Congress critters to get this thing passed at basically a holiday season. So that's point number 1, you comment or not. The other point I want to circle back on, but again, I'm interrupting your flow somewhat, is the transition between ending it, I'll use the word, peacefully, and then resurrecting. And I agree with you. I'm for competing currencies. I mean, if it's gold and silver, if it's a tokenized whatever, that's what people want. If it's some kind of, printed currency that's redeemable or even not. I mean, people can choose. The other thought that came with that, John, and I don't want to throw too much at you, is, the wildcat banking of the West. People always
Yeah.
talk about the gold standard failed and they refer to the wildcat banking, but really that's not true. It always boils down to honesty or trust. Trust and honesty. Anyway, I don't want to get you too far off track, but I do want to get the first point's a moot one, whether it's legally passed or not. That's kind of beyond the point at this now. But about how we transition, I want to get there when you're ready to get there. But last question before I forget. Do you have the whole white paper that I can post as a link when we get done with the interview?
Oh, for sure. I'll share it with you, so you'll have all that.
Yeah, we got some academic types that follow me, follow you.
Yeah, I'd be curious to what they have to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
sure.
Great. Carry on now that I jumped in the middle.
Yeah, and so commercial banks cannot do this and would be jailed if they tried, right? So commercial banks can create credit, but not money. They can create reserves. They pay their employees by investing their deposits. Now, yeah, they invest their so that's interesting. So they pay their employees by investing the deposits. So the loan that we give to the bank by depositing money into it, they can pay themselves by investing that money and playing with it in the stock market. If a commercial bank paid salaries from losses, it would be shut down, audited, and executives would potentially be jailed for fraud or insolvency. The Federal Reserve does not exactly do this. It's actually protected by their own law. So they're protected to, not being jailed by law that they created themselves. The banks are created for the Federal Reserve. For the Federal Reserve to be allowed to do what they are not to, they would be put in jail if they tried this. But the Federal Reserve, their bailout mechanism, are allowed to. So there's, the individuals there are sitting there on a high horse, these PhDs, and trying to just be like, oh yeah, we're doing this for we got to make sure we keep inflation on track and the labor labor participation. You make sure that people are working and so on, and that's so far from the truth of what they're trying to do there over at the Federal Reserve. Basically, it's just they created their own kind of weird pseudo type of education system with that has nothing to preserve in reality, because what they created is a kind of a lie, but they created the PhD in economics and everything that you are allowed to be able to get to in order to sit there and basically siphon out money, because you have the privilege to work with the banks and act like you control the economy, which you definitely are not. Basically the banks are the ones in control. They set the interest rates and so on, and the Federal Reserve just follows, up and down what happens, and they have very little control. So step-by-step dismantling plan. So phase one. So this is like the dismantling. Now we're coming to that. So the phase one is to repeal the legal privilege that they have, abolished the legal tender laws, allow any form of money, then repeal capital gains taxes on crypto, gold, silver, and barter. That's an interesting proposal. Allow monetary competition in commerce, contracts, and payrolls. So that's phase one. To just invoke competition.
Let's stop there a little bit,
please.
kind of examine a little bit. So basically what it's saying is abolish the law. And again, I bring up that, was it ever really enacted anyway? But again, that's a moot point. And so now it's basically going on what we both agree upon. Not some of our libertarian buddies may not, but it's like, hey, free to choose money, and whatever money works best. It boils down to only gold and silver at some point. Fine, but let the market decide that.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a crypto, But I love the fact that I'll say it, I don't know what to refer to it as,
No.
smart enough to recognize that you can't put a tax or a capital gain on money. Money
Yeah.
is free
Right.
of itself and its value is determined in the marketplace. I might be able to rent your apartment for, I don't know, let's say you have a great place in Toronto. I don't know what rents are. I know they're very high, but anyway, 1 gold ounce a month, okay?
Yeah.
And I make that contract for 12 months and I pay the landlord 12 coins, 12 ounces. And then the next year, I could do it for 10 ounces because, that's the market
Yeah.
change and whatever. Point I'm trying to make is let the free market determine the value of whatever. And it fluctuates.
Oh
That's
yeah.
the other
Yeah.
point. But that's the market saying we value this over this at this point in time. I mean, if you're running out of wheat, a loaf of bread is going to cost more than if there's an overabundance of wheat. You got to, bake it just to get rid of it, kind of a thing. And that's the real
100%.
economy. Don't want to go too far in a tangent. I just want to make the point for our
Yeah.
listeners, viewers, that an open free market works best. And if there's discrepancies in an open free market, the market determines that pretty quickly. So if you get some harebrained idea and you have 2% of the entire population following that monetary path, it's probably going to burn out and the market will take care of itself. It's not a perfect system, but it's the most perfect system that's ever worked as far as all of recorded history anyway.
Yeah, because it allows individual human beings to make their own decision, but in a massive way together. That's
Right.
the market. Yeah, no, I thought that was pretty interesting. And then allow monetary competition in commerce, contracts, and payroll. So, but yeah, so basically, I could go and ask my boss. It's like I don't want use dollars anymore. I want silver or gold or Bitcoin to be paid. In my salary. Is that okay? And then so we'll allow for a lot of those things. And what you're doing in the phase one is you basically are repealing the monopoly that they have with the legal tender law, and then you're adding competition into it. That's phase one,
Let me
basically.
stop there. Sorry, but you got
Oh, no,
me
please.
going. This is capitalism. It's
Hmm.
supposed to be, and so many, let's say, less informed, capitalism's the problem. I suggest we ought to try it. you
Yeah,
know,
it's
which
about
is
time, yeah,
which
because
is
it
what
doesn't exist in my view, and I
which
think
is
you
what
agree.
you're outlining. I just had to get that in there because, but it's a distortion, and people hear a narrative, and one thing that really upsets me. I'm going to digress for a moment, but if you tell a lie often enough, it usually becomes believed enough to become the truth in quotation marks, which is very upsetting. I think the main flaw in the human species is that the belief system can overpower the truth. We can believe things that simply aren't true, but swear on a Bible they are true. Anyway, I digress. Throw it back at you, but I like where this is going because it's pretty simplistic in words,
Yeah,
probably be hard to execute, but those 2 points, I couldn't agree more. Get rid of it legally, and let's let the free market determine what the best money is. And if there's 5 or 10 or 25 of them, I don't care. That's the
yeah,
market doing its thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. No, it's I think that's a great starting point to actually, and I think Millet is doing something a little bit similar. Love or hate Millet, what's going on in Argentina, but he actually did open up for competition. I think he repealed some kind of legal tender law in Argentina and allowed for that kind of thing to happen. So that's very interesting, actually. That might be, happening in Argentina as well, which is a very interesting experiment. Love or hate Millet for his certain beliefs that he has, but I think it's a very interesting thing that's happening there. So, but yeah, let's go to then phase two, which now, okay, so in phase one, we repealed the legal privilege, but we also then applied and allowed for free market competition of money and into the system. Now, phase two is to end the Fed's legal monopoly. So, by doing that, you need to, according to um, ChatGPT, with the knowledge that it has, you need to repeal the Federal Reserve Act. you need to revoke the Fed's exclusive power to issue base money, which is coins and notes, and compulsory bank clearing through the Fed system. So FedNow is their, the system that they use to clear through. So everything has to, go through the central clearing of the Federal Reserve. And then allow free market clearinghouses and private note issuances. So yeah, so again, you can now have, let's say, a bank, if they wanted to, issue a note if they wanted to. It could be backed by gold, it could not be backed by gold, but you allow then for private entities when I looked at the old like kind of wildcat banking, I think we're talking about the same thing. There was private corporations that also issued notes during that time. So it's very interesting. They allowed for that, and I don't see any problem with that at all. And again, it comes down to trust. Trust them. Are they going to scam you? Some might, but also there might be some that are actually way more trustworthy than others. It's in humanity, everything is based upon trust, and so we create trust by having somebody that you could again and again they do the right things that make us trust them more by let's say let's say they put out a note-based fiat currency system, but their currency is not getting debased by them issuing atrocious amounts of units and other things that would make it over time potentially more people will adapt to that. And then also with just pure gold, using gold or silver coins for payments as well, over time I really like, and the trust for gold and silver has been like through how many thousands of years. That it's always been there because it's such a precious type of metal that you could mint into these little units, uniform units that you call coinage and so on. So it's been quite trustable because you could put them into units, and there's a very limited amount of them on the planet. So yeah, so that's the end the Fed's legal monopoly is you repeal the Federal Reserve Act, revoke the Fed's exclusion power to issue the base money. You end compulsory bank clearing through the Fed system, and then you allow free market clearinghouses, if it's banks or if it's private entities, and private note issuances. So you basically are creating kind of a free financial market in a sense with that last one. And then you got phase 3. You enable open currency competition. So back again, like we kind of started it at the start, but now you legalize community currencies, decentralized stable coins, and tokenized credit, for example. That's just one portion of it. Protect anonymous transactions like cash, privacy coins, or peer-to-peer apps that would transfer value. End regulatory targeting of alternatives like Monero, Lightning, and mutual credit systems. So basically, you allow in these systems. So you got to remove the barriers now. Like we're trying to create competition, you got to move all the legal barriers that are in the system. There's quite a substantial amount, and probably go way deeper in detail on exactly which bills and whatever they've created that you need to abolish. But again, it kind of points us in a very clear direction of what needs to be done. Then we got phase 4 is to liquidate the Federal Reserve. So first of all, you publicly audit, and then you liquidate the Federal Reserve's $7 trillion plus balance sheet. Return all physical gold, assets, and real property to taxpayers. Then you dissolve regional banks, so the 12 banks, Federal Reserve banks, and the Board of Governors. End all remittances and reserve relationships. So that is phase 4. And then phase 5 is replace it with voluntary decentralized systems. So promote free banking, gold standard through regular gold, but also through crypto. and then you let networks compete. So you put in gold, Bitcoin, commodity tokens, credit money, and other notes that people would want to issue, and no state. So this is the key here, because you have a lot of talk about legal tendering in states, right? No state backing, no state enforcement, only voluntary adoption and trust. So again, there's just a lot of movements out there that wants, we just need a legal tender law for gold and silver. Well, why do we need legal tender laws at all? Repeal those legal tender laws. Let people be able to access. So yeah, so that is the portion of how we kind of get to the point, and then we could talk about the post-abolition justice and repeal, and then you prosecute people. So that's an interesting point that we're going to come to after. I don't know if you have any points or not, David.
No, I'll let you continue on. You're doing great. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So now we're getting to the post-abolition and justice. So repeal the Federal Reserve Act and take down the Federal Reserve's powers, and then you prosecute. So now we're actually getting to a very interesting point where it brings in a lot of organizations because of the Federal Reserve. So let me just read it here because it's quite interesting. So once the Fed is dismantled and its legal protection is removed, the public must demand monetary crimes tribunal to investigate and prosecute those who designed and knowingly perpetuated a self-funded money printing monopoly, wrote themselves legal exemption to commit acts that would be illegal for anyone else, collude with Wall Street, the U.S. Treasury, the International Monetary Fund, and the Bank of International Settlement to enable decades of currency debasement, lied to the public about the consequences of quantitative easing, inflation, and the debt monetization, acted as an elected technocrats while destroying public savings and economic justice. No academic degree can shield from fraud. No PhD can excuse them from systemic theft. No suit or title can legitimize monetary tyranny. And then once legal barriers are gone, criminal accountability must follow. So after the whole abolishment and removing the laws, once those barriers are gone, criminal accountability must follow, just as it would for any cartel, Ponzi scheme, or counterfeiting operation. Yeah, so there you go. So that's basically you need to prosecute people. And we're going to get, I think there's a little bit more here that we're going to get into on who they think that would be, those people would be. Let's see here. Conclusion: the monopoly must fall, of course. So any monopoly, just to explain to people, any monopoly or whatever you have, if it's printing money, if it's a corporation that provides a service, when you create any monopoly, usually that monopoly becomes overbloated, corrupt, and then provides usually a lot less of a service that it initially would provide. And so any monopoly needs to have competition. So you need to abolish, there has to be pure, adulterated free markets out there in anything that you have, or else you're just going to get corruption as a part of it. So the conclusion: the monopoly must fall. The Federal Reserve is the crown jewel of global economic fraud. It is the ultimate extractor and engine of inflation and invisible taxer of nations. It doesn't matter that it wears a suit, quotes equations, and calls itself a bank. It prints money to pay itself, while the world drown in debt, decay, and dependency. We say, no more. Let freedom, not fraud, and define the future of money. Let competition destroy the cartel. Let justice follow the truth. Let the Federal Reserve be abolished and its architects held accountable. And so that's really good. And then I think here, hold on, just going to go down. Yeah, so this is interesting. So I had two versions of this, and then it actually goes into the prosecution framework on how you actually come after the people that was a part of the Federal Reserve. It actually does it in quite a more of detail. So let me just get into a few little things here that it talks about. So establish legal grounds after you repealed everything. So retroactively criminalize central banking acts that would otherwise constitute counterfeiting, embezzlement, fraud and misrepresentation, racketeering, and collusion. Pass new legislation specifically revoking immunity from prosecution former central bank officers, consultants, and Fed-backed economists. Who should be investigated? The members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, presidents of the 12 regional Federal Reserve banks, the legal counsel who engineered immunity and evasion, academic economists who deliberately misled public about inflation, quantitative easing, and solvency, Treasury officials who colluded in backdoor bailouts and monetary sabotage. So evidence to be used, internal communications providing knowledge of long-term inflationary harm, public statements versus the private Fed predictions, data showing manipulation of bond markets and asset prices for insider benefits, repeated failure to disclose real inflation impacts to the public. Charges could include systemic economic fraud, theft by deception, high-level racketeering, RICO statutes, violation of fiduciary duty to the public, and conspiracy to conceal monetary risk and insolvency. So public tribunal and sentencing. Once the investigations are complete, convene public monetary tribunals where victims of inflation, savers and workers, retirees, and economists outside of the cartel testifies to the harms done. Sentencing could include prison terms for criminal masterminds, restitution payments to people that have been abused by their policies, lifetime bans from financial institutions, confiscations of pensions, assets, and consulting proceeds linked to monetary manipulation. Yeah, so that's basically that was the extended version of what I just talked about, and it went into a lot greater detail on actually who and what and how and what they'll have to face if you were to go down the prosecutional road. Which if you do dismantle something, you can't just let them off the hook. I don't feel like that. Like back in the day, this is interesting. In Sweden in the 1600s, you had a guy called Johann Palmstruck. He created the first paper money in and debt-based system in Sweden. Well, he created the system. He basically issued lots of debt, in the system itself. It was the Riksdaler, the Swedish Riksdaler, that they created. They created paper notes on it and then debt attached to it. Now, what he did, he created too many notes. He issued too much debt and so on. It created a bubble, and the inflation got atrocious, and the whole like monetary system that he created through a private bank. This was a private bank at the time in Sweden before their creation of the central bank. He created that, but then what ended up happening is it collapsed, and then people were furious because they lost everything, because they believed that his money had value. Well, what ended up happening to him, he was sentenced to hanging at the time, Johann Palmstruck, and then his great idea was taken and then adapted into the first central bank that was ever created, which was Riksbanken in Sweden. And so, yeah, there was serious consequences, but then they copy pasted it and legalized it, basically legalized plunder. So, anyways, I thought that was some very interesting ideas that I pulled out and it came forward with from my like the prompts that I put out to it. So I think it's quite some interesting details and what could be done to individuals that have been colluding, because there's plenty of collusion that happen, and it's very immoral the way it's set up to bail out the banks. And maybe we should also look at the commercial banks and the way they are able to create anything out of nothing. Because wouldn't it be great if you and me, David, had a little bank, which we can't really get. I know Rick Rule is trying to get Battle Bank up and running, but how hard is it for him to get a license to print money? And so it's basically like a club, and you ain't in it.
Yeah.
And they create their own. So now, how about the bankers? You can look at the bankers as well after you've gone after the Federal Reserve and their system of basically collusion, where they could create something out of nothing, where they don't have to put any risk up themselves. You put up all the risk with your asset that you give them, and they give you a credit for it. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you have some thoughts on it. And
I want to go ahead and jump in here. Several thoughts. I want to get them out. One is piggybacking on Rick Rule's bank. Have you watched the? I guess I'll call it a documentary, Bank of Dave. Have you seen that on Netflix?
No, I don't think I have.
Yeah, I would highly recommend you take a look.
Yes.
This is a guy named Dave, get his last name, in the UK. He's a car dealer, pretty well off. He was like a millionaire of the town. I don't know if he was a one-time or 10-time millionaire. It was much more than one. Nice guy. And he went to apply for a bank. And if my memory serves, and it may be slightly off here, it was like the first time in 152 years that they issued a new banking license in the UK. Like you said, it's a big club and you're not in it.
Yep.
So they said, okay, fine. And of course, in the back rooms, they're saying, well, we don't want this to happen, but we'll say you can have it. So they basically came up with all you have to fund it with. I think it was £6 million or something. And, his net worth was like 4 if he sold everything, or 4 liquid, and, he couldn't put together 6.
Right.
And he ran a concert with Def Leppard, I believe it was, and raised the money because there's like a big stadium in town. So he got it. And he started the first new bank. And it's very successful. And what the bank does is it makes a profit like any bank, but they put the profits in the community. Like they increase their healthcare service, they increase their food bank thing. Maybe they, I know those are like 2, and there's other things. So basically the profit goes right back in the community. It's basically a community bank. It's a small bank, but it's really good. Well, somehow or other, Netflix or something gave me a feed about the documentary number 2, and I'm going to digress for a minute, but these, I don't even know what to call them, these predatory loans that are mostly put on the poor, where, hey, you're $500 short, we'll loan you $500 based on your paycheck, and you sign the paperwork and you find out you got a compound interest rate that's usury beyond belief. And so you pay back $400 and you find out you still owe $1,400, and you only borrowed $500 to begin with. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, it gets
these are, they're very bad.
So he learned about this because he does these talk shows every month. I don't think they're once a week. They could be. And one of these people that had been called in and, told him about it. He was unaware of it. So the second documentary goes into where he battled these guys, and it was quite fascinating. So those 2 documentaries I suggest you look at. And then going back to Werner, Professor Werner, I mean, that guy is, he's right at the top of my list as far as, gut level honest, very succinct on how the system really works, how corrupt it is, and all of that. I think everyone should listen to that talk.
And sorry to interrupt you. He was also the guy that created the Young Global Leader list. He was the guy that leaked the list when they were called Global Leaders for Tomorrow. He was the guy. Know that. Yeah. Wow. And then he leaked, and then they had to change their name. So that was Richard. Well.
He's a hero in my book. Yeah. But he talks about banking can be ethical, and I believe that. But it isn't ethical, as we both know. Yeah. So a couple things that concern me with the proposal that AI came up with. One is a prosecution thing. I mean, I absolutely think it's correct. It's just how cumbersome the laws become. And then, well, hey, I'm banker number 6 of a long line of, banking families. And, JP Morgan's dead and he's the one that started it. So why can I be held accountable? Who knows what kind of nonsense,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, and the other one is the transition still concerns me
Yeah.
because who's going to, so there's no Fed tomorrow, turn the switch off. Um, people will probably still use Federal Reserve notes out of habit. I don't know. But who's going to rebank everybody? Well, I've got so much silver that, I could go out and, do commercial activity, but, how much would I fund? 10 people? And what do I do? Buy land? Or, I just see that transition as the right thing to do, but not easily to do. And the
Well,
easiest
definitely not.
one that I've thought about for years, doesn't make it right, was, what Kennedy proposed, which was not a silverback currency. Almost everybody gets that wrong. I'm here on record to say that it was not silverbacked. It's called a United States note instead of a Federal Reserve note. It was printed by the Treasury, just like the Federal Reserve notes are printed by the Treasury. But they were issued and by the Treasury, not the Fed. And then the Fed would be taken out of power and these US notes would be in circulation. But he was assassinated. So then,
and actually back there, I have a $2 note right there. That's
yeah,
the United States note.
right.
It's interesting.
So I think that's the easiest transition. Not that I'm for statism, as you know, but if you abolish the Fed, took on the prosecutions for as many decades as it would take, who knows? I'm not think I'm being facetious.
No.
And then you issued U.S. notes from the Treasury and paid the Fed off with U.S. notes. Okay, we owe you $37 trillion. Here you go. Oh, here's a $30 trillion bill. Spend it when you want, and then and start it that way. But it's a tough problem. I really enjoyed the outline. I don't want to go too much further down that road because we could talk all day on hypotheticals and they really don't do anybody good. I think you defined the problem, you got a solution. I think it's a very pretty well crafted solution. I do see the snags I just mentioned, but I want to move on to a topic that you and I've discussed for a long time, and that is, to me, freedom demands some privacy. I mean, people, well, I got nothing to hide. Well, maybe you don't have anything to hide, but what you're out there in the open doing today may be breaking the law 10 years from now. I mean, that sounds absurd, but if you've been around as many years as I have, I mean, just the idea of free speech becomes hate speech, and you can be put in jail for hate speech. Oh, wait a minute, what happened to free speech? That's guaranteed by the constitutionally God-given rights of the Constitution of the United States. But yet they have a mandate that supersedes the law of the land. How does that work? It doesn't legally. But go into court and say that, and you get another 2 years on your jail sentence because they've got the guns and the power, which is unfortunate. So my point is that you've worked very hard on a system. I think it's called, what was it?
Outeret.
Outeret, and it's privacy of self-posting and privacy. So tell me about Outeret, spell it, tell us where you are on that and how we can learn more about it. And I will commit to you, as I already have, but publicly, once it's seasoned, I'm going to say 3 to 6 months. I want you back on to explain, the system and how people can get involved. If you can get involved now and people want to take the early adopter thing, that's fine with me. I'm free market. I'll hold them back. But pretty excited about it. I know you are. So give us an update on Outeret, please.
Yeah, no, for sure. So where we're at now, we actually have created the base structure of the whole system. So what we created is in the easiest sense, we have created a replacement for AWS, so Amazon Cloud Services, or Azure, or iCloud, any of those cloud providers that's out there. But what we've done is we've put the cloud on a little device, which is a mini computer. And so it's running there at my house instead of in a data center that Amazon has full legal rights to look at all my data, check everything that I do. They could shut me off at any instant if they don't like me. And so I have no rights. So what we chose to do is let's create a decentralized cloud-based system. So basically, anybody that have any form of processing power out there, or even a regular person, could choose to set up their own little cloud thing. And all they need to do, this is very interesting, by the way, all the stuff that we do is not app based. So it's not based upon, going on to and having an app, to Google Apps, the Google Play Store, or, your Apple App Store, or if you go to Microsoft, like today, Windows 11, you have to have an app, that you download onto it. Well, what we did is we're going to have it browser based. So we basically have kind of created even our own browser, but you could run it on any browser. So you could run it on, when you open up your iPhone, you use Safari. You could just go in there and then put in a web address, like it would be like right now, what's running on mine is hub.bankrun. I use my bankrun domain, .ca/cloud. And then you would run this cloud thing. And what this cloud thing would do is, right now it's not as fancy as it's going to be in the near future, but you would then provide computing power to the whole network. So you allow for everybody that runs one of these clouds, they could then be able to provide a little bit of computing power, and they could also then have stuff running on their cloud that would be copied, for example. So you could have kind of a distributed data thing as well if you wanted to, or you could choose to have it all by yourself on your computer at home. So you could shut off the internet. But what we plan to do is we created something called a super app. And the super app, first of all, this whole thing, we have zero control over. When you download a super app, for example, like you go and set up your own, what's called a hub that you have at your house, Outeret itself, we provide a protocol so you could transfer data on. That's it. We cannot intervene in anything that you do with that. And so what's really cool then is you put up your own little thing at your house. And if you have let's say you have a little faster of a computer, you could then, in the very near future, you could upload an AI to it. You could basically talk to it like a Jarvis, for example, like Tony Stark in the Iron Man movies. You could have your own little thing that you could interact with at your home. But what we're planning to do is something very different from the vision of the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum says, you own nothing and you'll be happy. Well, we're like, that doesn't sound very much like I'll be happy. And so what we chose to do is we created the super app platforms. So web developers, they could put up their own apps on this platform. They could then put a paywall on it. So if they wanted to sell, something that would run on our platform, well, it's not really our platform, our protocol. They could put up a little thing, and then they could tell people that go to this page and download my thing, and then you download it to your computer, like let's say a mini computer or your big computer, desktop or something. What ends up happening is now, instead of Amazon and all these other stores that when you put up an app as a web developer, you have to pay 30 to 60% of your revenue to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're doing is we get no revenue at all, and they are allowed to now run their app and sell it to people. And you can download it. Dave Morgan can download it to his little thing at home. Let's say was any kind of app that you could think of. Like, let's say you wanted to watch the gold price or silver price or something. And so you get a ticker or whatever. And so you had that, you paid a little bit of money for it, but now you own it. It's on your computer. There's full ownership over it. And nobody could just delete it from the store, like Apple or Google could just delete an app and it would be gone from your phone, for example, or Microsoft could do the same, or any other browser. So with us, that web developer gets fully paid. He then can sell to everybody, but now he provides something that you own. He doesn't have it on his cloud platform somewhere where you can control it. and then you log into that when you go in your little app, and then he could shut that off, or the government could come and shut him off. And so now he sells individuals. So it actually stores the data right on your thing, like right on your computer. But most people today don't understand that when they save stuff today, a lot of times they save it to a cloud. So it's not on your computer, right?
Right.
And so this would save it directly on your device. We want to, of course, create this on like, your phone, your computers and everything. But so that's the first one. Now, any creator out there, you're a podcaster too, David. So you could set up, let's say you download an app, like somebody create an app that make all of your videos that you had on this little computer look like a YouTube search thing. Okay, so now you can just upload to, like, get that app in, and then it looks like pretty nice, like you have your videos and everything. You could even set up a paywall if you wanted to on certain videos, for example. But now David Morgan or anybody else that wanted to help you could put that on their little box. And so now you distribute the content on, let's say, 100 boxes, but they still have to pay, let's say, for a video or something, or some content, or they could have your books in there, whatever you want. And then you would get paid for it. But now there's 100 copies of it. So it's not that anybody could just come in and be like, oh, I'm going to shut off your GoDaddy account or something where let's say you hosted it there, or any other web provider, right? So that's the second one. So any, people that create content, now it's self-hosted, and people can then, in the very near future, they could come in and then choose to help you distribute it on several other devices. So it's, more protected from, like, somebody could come in and put a gun to my head right now and steal my box. But if 100 people had it, that's going to be very much harder. So that's one of the big things. So that's for content creator, musicians, any other people. Like, they have their Spotify that does the same as the App Store, where they take a lot of money from these creators. Hollywood people, they could create their movies instead of putting on Netflix. They could just put it up for sale and downloadable through this, and then you could download it to your little mini computer. But you pay a fee for it, right? Or money or gold or whatever. And then you have it directly downloaded on your computer. Music, like I've created like a little MP3 player, so I could play. Like, I used to do this back in the day when I was younger. There was like, I created a huge playlist where I had all my music. This was before the day of the streaming services. So I actually owned it. But now it's gone back to, now I go to Spotify to, listen to some good music or whatever I want. And I don't own it. They could just shut that off right there and then. Same with Amazon. Books, like people that provide books, you could do the same thing. Websites, like this could be self-hosted websites. So I could have my own website here. You go on to my website. Oh, it's actually my mini computer, not that data center, that could choose to be like, because there has been people that have had their web domains taken down because they weren't liked.
Look at how many YouTube channels were taken down in the March 19 situation. And then the situation that was taking place, and all of a sudden these people disappear. Now, a lot of those people have come back online, but I digress. And personally, I just, my site was taken down actually a couple times in the early days. And one of my good friends got a hold of me, and that's when I decided to not go with GoDaddy or any internet service provider, paying them whatever it was. It's actually fairly expensive because the amount of memory I needed at the time, and memory cost something back in the day. Point I'm making is I bought a server. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be taken down, but it's a lot harder because I own the damn thing. I own the server.
So you're kind of, you moved in the way of what we're trying to build. That's what you're trying to say.
So I've never had, like, you sent too much spam or shutting you off, which is what happened. And just to go a step further, like, oh, I knew Morgan was a spammer, No, I was sending out alerts to my paid list. And they decided it was spam and shut me down. And I just want to say that because I'm getting a little hot all over again. It's been years since this happened. But this talks about the privacy that you and I are discussing. It's like, I'm running a legit business. I have people paying me for this information, and you're depriving them of a contract that I have with these people because somebody in the back office decided I was sending too many emails.
Yeah.
But that's when you don't have control.
100%.
So, and there's people that are going to hide behind privacy for illicit activities. You're never going to get around making
impossible.
everyone 100% honest. It's just not the way things work. But by having our own platform like you're describing, I wouldn't have had that problem, because think of the goodwill that I lost from people that came to the website and it wasn't there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not a fun time. Anyway, I want to give it back to you, John. I want to wrap it up here, but give them all the information on how to contact you and any closing statements that you like. Pleasure to have you on. The Economic Truth. Love that name. And we just got to keep fighting.
100%.
Hopefully before our platforms come down.
Well, that's why we're building fast, because you got all these online safety acts now in the UK and Australia. And I think one is coming right around the corner here in Canada as well. And those are directly attacking. That's why we're at the right precipice of what we're building. Is we're coming in with a solution to help people, from the ginormous censorship grid that has been created. And so how about, instead of you owning none of your data, how about you own all of your data?
Yeah.
Quite the radical opposite.
Yeah. I got to emphasize that because, everyone that's aware and, has learned that, data is the new gold. I mean, data is everything. And they own it. You'll own nothing. So just take it to the data. You own nothing. So you own none of your data, Amazon does, or one of these other cloud services, and you'll be happy. So we own your data. You don't. And now we just flip that. We own it and they don't. What a concept. It goes back to, digress again real briefly, but the ownership theory of money. What a concept. I own this silver coin. Yeah. And now I'm trading it to you for this service that I want from you for a year or a month or whatever it is. And this is something that the powers that be are inundating us with on a cognitive map to get us to think differently. We don't need anything. We just want it provided by Big Brother. We don't know what to do. Big Brother will tell us how to do it and how we need it and how we take it and all that, with a little ketchup on the side. And there's a lot of people buying into that, I don't need to drive, Uber will do it. Well, I don't, I mean, it's crazy. Anyway, give it back to you, but I really like what you just said. I think that's what I want to emphasize it. They have your data and you don't. And that's the new goal. If you buy into the concept that that's the new gold or close to it, that should be a wake-up call for everybody. Hey, wait a minute. I didn't think of it in those terms before, that this is, my life is basically my online life, which for most people now is a great portion of their life.
Oh, yeah.
Is owned by somebody else on their system that they have total control over.
Yeah.
That should scare people if you think about it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what, trying to come up with I think it's quite the good solution. Just to read it quickly, the developer that we're working with, he worked on BitTorrent, and he worked on the Bitcoin system in the early stages of it. So this guy is no joke. He knows what he's doing. He's very seasoned developer guy. He's not one of those young dudes, that are trying to put together a code. He's watched this, and he's never gone through the school of universities or anything. He learned all the stuff by hands-on himself. Very impressive. So, but anyways, I should close it up here. But I think if anybody wants to know more, go to Outer, so OUTERR.net. And you could also go, if you want to have more information, you go to outeret.net/community. And if you go there, you'll actually see, you could just sign up quickly. And the sign up, by the way, does not go to any data broker or anything. It goes right on my little computer here. I could actually sit and watch. As soon as you enter in your data, it pops up on my Linux Arch like command line that you entered your data, and that's where it stays. It never goes anywhere else. So if you go there to find out more, we're getting very close, probably a few weeks to for people that really want to get in early and are quite more technical. They now have the ability to join us, join our community, and then they could set up their own clouds and hubs in their own houses, so they could learn about it and they could start using it. And then I hope in about a month we could have then the general population actually coming in and creating accounts and really playing around with it. And then within 3 to 4 months, I'm really hoping that we have now these hub computers. My goal with this, David, is to have a not only my little mini computer plugged into the internet. That's just step one. Step two is going to be for it to interconnect and talk to each other. So now we're eliminating the third big control mechanism they have. It's the internet service providers. Mm-hmm. So now we could talk to each other and we create our own internet, like our own Outeret, basically outside of what they built, which is a more quite centralized structure. And the whole idea of it is going back to decentralizing the internet again. That was how it wanted to be built in the first place. But then the platforms got created, like Facebook and all these centralized platforms, and that's where we go instead of having a decentralized mesh of self-hosted data around. So I think it's going to be very powerful. Check those 2 web pages out, and then go to my website. Of course, I still do a lot of economic stuff, even though I'm very focused on this project. But go to theeconomictruth.org, check that out, and go to my Telegram channel. That's where I post a lot of my news right now. And yeah, that's it, David. I think we touched upon, and I appreciate that they let me talk about the my biggest passion right now, which is I love economics and money, but this is even bigger, I think, because it's one thing talking about stuff, but now I'm creating something that actually will allow people to take action upon and control their lives again. I think it's very powerful. So thank you, David.
Yeah, I'm going to add on here a little bit. So I've got over 1,000 videos over 25 years. So like I moved them all to Odyssey and another couple of platforms, especially when I was getting very, concerned that my YouTube channel might be taken down. But that's still being hosted by someone else. I assume this is robust enough for me to transfer everything to this system, and then it's owned by me. And if I'm taken down, I don't really care because it's on my own.
Yeah, and that's where this system is going. Like I'm hosting videos right now that I could see on my system. If you have time, I'll do a little demo, but it's pretty cool. Like I could actually just go and pick up my videos that I host myself and look at them. And I could do it from my phone even, but I'm not on my network. So
I think I'll save it for next time if you don't mind. 100%. We've already gone more than an hour, but
no, not now for sure.
I want you back on. We'll examine that, and maybe there'll be an update on the Fed. And there's so much talk. I don't want to belabor this any longer, but there's so much out there in the news feeds about, remonetizing gold and, the Fed's real power and on and on. But I don't want to go there. We did a pretty good interview. John, thank you for your time. And we'll looking forward to having you back. And go Canada.
Go. No, I'm not a. Yeah, no, I don't know what's.
I know I made you laugh.
No, that's pretty fun. I love it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, no, pleasure. Always pleasure being on. I thank you so much.